All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Dax Emerson, who is an old friend from high school, and he is now a graduate student with the Master's in Management program at Temple University, the Japan campus. He's also looking to launch his career in management consulting. Dax, how you doing?
Doing great, sir. Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. Thanks for coming on. And we like to jump right in. So if you could start with telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you like to do for fun, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So thanks again. And like you said, I'm a student with the Master's in Management program at Temple University, Japan campus. So right now I'm not working full time, but hopefully I'm about to be working full time once I can graduate and get some more time on my hands in that regard. That would be fantastic. The main focus I'm having right now is just working on a transition between going to school and going to hopefully one day entering the workforce full time, because my entire life I've been in academia, really. And that's maybe a melodramatic way to say it, because basically I've just been a student, right? And any job and employment history I've had, it's been part-time. But this time, since I'm looking to do something, full-time, and I'm not going to be at school necessarily, starting at the latter half of this year. It's going to be a transition, and I'm going to have to figure out ways to adjust to life where I don't necessarily have the obligations that come with being in school, and I don't have the obligations associated with that type of environment, but rather I have to change and adjust that to a more a work-life balance, I guess, is a popular buzzword for the day.
Yeah.
But as far as what I like to do for fun, I love to run. Since I was a very young kid, I've always been doing sort of these long distance runs. Cross country track is always very fun because you're just able to sort of go out and not really, well, first you're getting the exercise associated with the activity, but then you're also able to just let your mind wander, and you don't have to focus on any particular thing. You can if you want to, naturally, but you're certainly not obligated to, which I think is one of the great things about running, because you can see all the different types of environments in the city, suburban area, rural area, that type of stuff. Other things I like to do for fun, I really love geography, and looking sorry, sometimes the words here scrambles in my brain when my brain is thinking faster than what I can
Good.
say. But I love looking at maps, and I've gotten interested in doing these geography games recently. Wordle, I think, of the New York Times, has become very popular, but I like Worldle. Worldle.
Yeah.
a little hard to pronounce, but they basically give you a picture of a country, and you have to guess what it is, and that keeps my brain sort of intellectually stimulated in a way that I think not just looking at a map or an atlas and kind of glazing it over would, because oftentimes when I do that for too long and I have a goal in mind, okay, I want to learn more about Turkmenistan, and pardon me, I get out the map of Turkmenistan, or I'm on Google Earth or whatever. Eventually my eyes just sort of glaze over, and I get lost in looking at the topography or the physical geography without any real purpose to that. So again, that's sort of just a way to keep me intellectually stimulated. And one caveat I will say to that, though, now that I think about it, is that you don't necessarily always have to have these specific goals in mind, I guess, when you're doing these type of low-key activities, because they are low-key and they're designed to just give you an opportunity to have some fun and invest in yourself. But even then, sometimes I still try to, even if I'm not consciously thinking about it, set at least a couple of goals such that it's a preventative measure, basically, so that my eyes don't glaze over. I'm not just wandering off mentally.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there we go. Let's jump into your motivation. Tell us about what gets you up and keeps you going every day?
Yeah, so it's funny you mention that because I've noticed throughout my life where anytime I like am doing something and maybe I'm getting tired of it or I'm not necessarily enjoying it as much as I liked at the beginning of when I started doing that activity, I always think, okay, when I graduate school or when I move to Japan or when I do X, Y, and Z, things will become better, or like magically a lot of your problems will be solved. Now, typically this happens to a certain extent, but oftentimes they're also replaced with a lot of or not a lot, excuse me, a different set of problems. Or really, in reality, you're never going to solve all your problems, especially at once. So you just have to keep trucking along, moving and adjusting to your environment, because life does not fundamentally change. So in that vein, what motivates me to sort of, to use the old cliche, get out of bed in the morning and keep going, is just trying to get the best out of life in the short period that we have on Earth, and to be able to be the best person I can be, whether it's from a professional or a personal development standpoint. Um, something something that I still need to learn more to come to terms with. And I've gotten better at this, I think, as I've gotten older. But something that really it strikes me is just like making the most of your opportunity, and not worrying so much about like what happened in the past, or trying not to be regretful. And this element of wanting to change is also a motivating factor in my mind, because it's like, okay, am I able to focus on what I can do in the present to be a better person, or am I just going to be stuck in the past? Because you can learn from the past, and that's perfectly fine. Sometimes it might even be good to reflect and get a little bit of that nostalgia that you feel, but it's not good, I think, to dwell in that. And I know maybe some people disagree, and I understand the argument that it's good to be motivated from the past, but I'm just, for me personally, I would be afraid to get too deep, or rather dive too deep into that line of thinking. So um long story short, when it comes to motivations, thinking about the future, thinking about how I can use each day as a stepping stone, those are really my motivating factors. And in a sense, I'm looking at the bigger picture, but more and more, I'm trying to look at it like small chunks each day, rather than look at it like, oh, I'm motivated by trying to get, this great job or graduate school, magna cum laude or summa cum laude, whatever it might be. And yeah, and actually, we might be talking about more about the job aspect of things later on in the podcast.
Yeah, like right now, actually. Let's talk about your dreams and goals. Tell us about your vision for your life and your career.
Absolutely. So wonderful transition there, evidently. I so I throughout my life, my careers change, or what I envision I want to do as a career changes. And right now, though, I'm more certain about it than I ever have been before. And of course, it can change. So certain, it's a relative term. I don't mean for that to be set in stone necessarily, but going into specifically either market research or management consulting has been I think will be a great opportunity for me. And it's something, pardon me, where I can learn, or not learn, I can apply many of the concepts learned in my graduate school classes to the real life setting. And specifically for management consulting, I didn't know what that was prior to entering business school. Really, like my program is designed for people with limited work experience, and I know there's some MBA candidates and things that are like they're much more versed and privy to this information than I was. But like when we talk about management consulting, it's typically people who help serve clients, whether they are individuals, but typically business organizations, achieve a certain set of goals to add value to the products and services that we use every day as a company. And it doesn't necessarily always have to relate to the products and services directly, but it could be some aspect of management, supply chain issues, something that the company wants to do better, basically. So they basically are contracting an outside third party to help provide this information and to do like a little outside analysis on the subject. And the reason why I want to get into management consulting and hopefully work for a day where I can be sort of on the ground helping business clients and being able to get a lot of experience and become more knowledgeable in these certain types of business fields is because you're hopefully able to see the end product of how your work comes to fruition in the real world, right? You're able to sort of see what was happening in the business before, what's going on after, and you can juxtapose that and say, hey, you know, these changes were made by the business as a result of the consulting job and of the work that myself and my team members did for this particular project. And that I think is very rewarding to see, because fundamentally speaking, from an economic level, and sorry, I should have mentioned this before. I was an anthropology major at my undergraduate school, the University of Rochester. And so I've gotten the question before, why did I go into business school when I did a social sciences major, anthropology? Reason being, I think the two are actually very related, or a lot more related than people give credit to, because with anthropology, you're studying humans, you're studying human behavior, the history of human development and cultures that we've created for ourselves today. And economics and business is just a network of people interacting together, trying to create different products and services that people need. And if we don't have those interpersonal connections working, and if we don't have a system of voluntary exchange wherein people can trade and barter for what they need, and of course now we have currencies and different things that help sort of standardize that. But many of the things we take for granted in our modern day society, like supermarkets and advancements in sort of the technology and infrastructure in how those products get to the stores and how we use them, none of that would be possible. None of that would be possible. And within this, there are so many little nuances in terms of cultural barriers, language barriers, different ideas and backgrounds, and not just terms of backgrounds in terms of where people are from or who they are, but in terms of ideology as well, and generational differences, outlooks on, you know, where the world is going and what we should be as a species. So with that sort of, in my view, that's where the anthropological and the economic piece kind of ties in. And I think on a more fundamental level, but this is a more tangential point, that I think a lot of anthropological analysis can be used to address many of the economic or business related problems that we see today, and vice versa. And that last point is a little bit more of a controversial point, but my argument for that is that humans respond to incentives. And so economists use the term all the time, where people have a certain or rather there's an assumption, there's a certain set of factors maybe that you're working with. And so you anticipate people are going to react to those factors in a certain way. 9 times out of 10, we might expect this to happen in the social science research. So using that economic analysis and that economic theory, we can then apply it to a particular set of people within a cultural context, and it might provide us insight on how we expect people to behave, or it might give us better insight on understanding their mindset and how their cultures and society has developed to the point where it is today. And the important thing is that we might not always agree with it, or we might not always understand, why don't we do things this way like they do in, the US or in other countries? But we have to understand, because if we don't understand, that could be a road to very, I think, not to be melodramatic, but dangerous unintended consequences, because then you're just, you're not really, you're not seeing the decisions that people make for what they are, like coming out of a genuine, good faith-based context. You're just seeing it as kind of an alienated sort of like misunderstanding of things that are going on. So I'm sorry, we got off topic there.
A little tangential, but that's okay. We were talking about kind of just management consulting and how business and your anthropology degree are more connected than you think. And you kind of, just to sum that up, we're saying that anthropology is like the study of human and human evolution throughout history. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's a good way to put it.
And so like business, like with supermarkets and stuff, as like business evolves, it also kind of evolves. It like business evolved with humans, and like kind of something I got from it, which I don't know if you said this specifically or just kind of alluded to it, but the fact that business runs because of humans. So as humans evolve, naturally business will evolve too. So I naturally see a connection there. And I've thought about it and how great capitalism is. You got decisions, their opinions on that, but basically the choice, when you have a choice, like choice is very powerful. Our own personal autonomy, like our ability to choose, but then our ability to be in a society where we can choose our business, choose our religion, choose this, choose that, choose this. And something that I've noticed is that entrepreneurs, when they're focused on innovation, it's typically to serve humanity, which is why I think those kind of play hand in hand. Like Jeff Bezos innovating Amazon, how he did, has changed how humanity functions, and that's like a business evolving as well as humans evolving with that business. So I clearly see the correlation there, is what I'm saying.
That's very well articulated, Tim. I'm glad you got that out of that, because that's kind of what I was trying to explain. And I know one thing is that when I say evolution, I certainly don't mean, or I obviously don't mean like literal, like natural selection type of evolution, but just the way things have changed and developed. Right. No, exactly.
Awesome.
And
go for it. My bad.
Oh, no, I just one last thing was that, and I know I have many friends who disagree with me on this, but like the point of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, these type of entrepreneurs working, they might say like, oh, they're motivated by greed, or they're motivated by, intrinsic factors not really related to the benefit of humanity. I personally don't know about that. Like I'm more in line of agreement with kind of what you were saying, in that ultimately they're trying to create products and services that people want and need, and there might be unintended consequences about that, but that's like another sort of realm of conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. The more I've gotten into entrepreneurship and I've thought about success and I've learned about success, I've learned that there's kind of a way that the world works, and the people who receive a lot of money are only receiving a lot of money because they're adding a lot of value to somebody's life. And there's this book called The Go-Giver by Bob Berg, and he talks about one of the laws of compensation. And it talks about the amount of money you receive is proportionate to the amount of value you add and how many people you add that amount of value too. So if you think about a doctor adds an immense amount of value, but to one person at a time, right? Like they'll save somebody's life with the surgery, but they only save that one life, if that makes sense. And they get paid well, but it's like $300,000 to $600,000 a year. Whereas Jeff Bezos, he adds maybe way less value, but to billions of people. And so
Right.
it's disproportionate. And so it's like, if you look at your life and you're like upset about your income, this is a little self-development tip. Look at the value you're adding to people's lives and how many people are you actually affecting in your day to day. And when you line that up, some of the greatest entrepreneurs, some of the wealthiest people are simply, they own systems or they own products that add a lot of value to a lot of people. And so
There we go.
you got to be focused on adding value if you're going to be successful, which is why I know these entrepreneurs are like, they're not horrible people, because they have to focus on adding value or they don't get successful. But
Right on.
there we go. Well, awesome. Dax, are there any other dreams or goals you want to talk about? I know you talked about going into market research or management consulting, but is there something else that you want to chat about, whether it be career-wise or your life in general?
Yeah, more life in general. A goal I have is to one day start a family, and I know that's very broad, but me, I'm 22 years old right now, and I'm not saying this because I'm in a rush to start a family or anything of that nature, but I would like to see sort of a unit develop where hopefully one day I'm able to share experiences with my wife and kids and be able to sort of pass down, and not just pass down a lot of the values and lessons that I would have learned up to now and then hopefully in the future to them, but just to be able to share these experiences and have these sort of great bonding moments with people whom you care about. I think that is something that people, again, a lot of people take for granted, because there have been many times where, I haven't really liked my parents, and I'm sure that goes for a lot of other people too, where they were upset or angry or frustrated. But I think they offer a lot to their children, and it's parents' responsibility to do so. To have that ability to exercise the raising of their children. So being able to do that is another goal of mine. But that, again, that's something that is I don't know when that's going to be. It just has to naturally happen, more so than me trying to force it to happen, if that makes sense. And this also might come along as my career hopefully launches and develops, and I'm able to get more of a work-life balance that I'm looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if there were one or two people that you could meet right now, and this could be a specific person or a type of person, and they would really help you take the next step towards going into management consulting or starting that family, who would they be and how would they help you?
Sure. So I'll give you both. I'll give you first a general type of person and then a specific person. So for the general type of person, I would need somebody who is energetic, naturally like outgoing, and is considered an extrovert in lieu of an introvert, whether he's saying like he's an extrovert himself, or people typically associate his or her behavior with being an extrovert. And I say that specifically because I'm definitely an introvert. Now, I know it's popular for people to say like, oh, I'm an introvert, blah, blah, blah. But like, I say that I'm not trying to be popular by saying that, no, like I left to my own devices, I would much prefer a sort of kickback environment, or be able to have the opportunity to sort of pull back and enjoy my own time by myself if like I become overstimulated, or I've been interacting with a lot of people. Just to have that time to rest and reset, I think, is very good. That's the best short way I could explain it anyway. So I would need somebody who has an opposite personality of me, specifically, again, somebody who's like extroverted and a go-getter, like willing to meet a lot of people, in terms of networking and soft skills. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that I haven't always been good with soft skills or like communicating with people, and there are different reasons for that too long, I think, for the purposes of this podcast, but sparing a lot of the context. Growing up, there were different developmental issues that I had, wherein maybe communicating with people and understanding the little nuances of nonverbal communication was an issue for me. And even today, it can be an issue. So I think having somebody who is just naturally able to connect with people and kind of show me a lot of the ways, like, hey, Dax, this would be a good type, a good thing to do, that I think would be very, very helpful for me. And so specifically, when I think of a person who is able to do this, but isn't, is somebody who I haven't met, and I don't know how I would meet him, but is actually Elon Musk, to kind of go in the vein of these sort of entrepreneurs and innovators, because he, I think, has done a lot of work, and he has his hands in his businesses in sort of many different sectors, but he is, from an economic and business perspective, probably the most influential person of the century so far. Like, seriously, with Tesla and SpaceX, and now he's getting into Twitter and stuff. And I know a lot of people don't like him, and I know he's become a controversial figure for his own reasons. That, to me, is actually more of a reason to meet him, because people, and this is one thing that I struggle with, is that one of my biggest character flaws is that I want people to like me, and sometimes sometimes I strive for people to be on good terms with people and to avoid conflict to my detriment. But people like Elon Musk, maybe they don't seem to care, or they just do kind of what they have to do without worrying about getting 100% satisfaction all the time. And that's what I need to do as well, because there are certain experiences where you just realize, like, hey, I'm never going to be able to satisfy 100% of the people 100% of the time. And if you do, or if you do have that mindset, you're 100% ignorant, maybe, just kind of like I've been for a long time and still can be when my thoughts go out the window. So yeah, I hope that covers it, the type of people that I would like to meet and really need to meet in terms of personal and professional development.
Yeah, for sure. Follow-up question: do you like you?
Well, I could be better. I'll say yes for now, but I could be better. And sorry, the hesitation and reluctance there is like, because I need to be better, and I know there's certain things that I need to do in terms of my personality and my academic life, where maybe I'm here, but I want to get to this level, and I need to work to get better, right? And that to me is that's where I think I get a lot of my self-critique, or how I judge myself, because we as individuals typically judge ourselves by our intentions and not by our actions, right? Because we can see somebody walking around the street, see them trip and fall and be like, oh, haha, that was funny. If we're evil and we're going to laugh about it, presuppose that, but they might judge themselves thinking, oh, I was trying to help out, this little puppy or thing that was out of view. I'm realizing this is kind of falling apart as I'm trying to think of an example on the fly. But the point is, since we are within ourselves, I kind of have to balance judging myself by my intentions and being able to easily justify myself because of those intentions, but then think of what I've done in real life and how the actions might look to other people, and realize that maybe my intentions, although they were good, don't always lead to the most optimal of outcomes. Right. And there have been times where I've seen something happen, whether it's like in a group project or with a family issue or something like that, where like some of the blame at least lands on me, and I'm like, oh crap, I should have been more cautious about that. And that leads me to be, I think, less likable from my own standpoint. So that
And
I hope that provides insight on the reluctance there I had to the initial answer.
so is liking yourself or not liking yourself contingent upon results and intentions in certain situations?
Well, yeah, honestly, I think so. And maybe this isn't really the best mindset to have, I don't think, but I have to be honest because it's something that's hard to avoid. Like, it's easier said than done. You
Yeah.
might be like, oh, if I don't accomplish this goal, I'm worth less as a person. Obviously, this is a very, to use the term, problematic and not very logical way of thinking. But at the same time, if you consider yourself a failure, or rather consider that action a failure, just from a human condition standpoint, we are more likely to value ourselves less, or think, um, damn, I'm sorry for the language there,
You're good.
that we can use the, now you're going to have to put the explicit
I am.
the
Yeah.
explicit tag. Oh man. But no, the
I'll put just one word though next to it.
just there we go, no, but what was I saying? Oh yeah, about the human condition and valuing yourself. So the sorry, I got lost there. I got a little off. I think I said mostly of what I wanted to say, though.
Yeah, yeah, no, I feel you. It is a really hard thing to do, to kind of separate your worth from the results you can produce or the intentions or the perceptions of others. But I'm going to challenge you, and then we can move on to. I got two more questions I want to ask. I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Think of a baby.
Okay.
When that baby comes into the world, what is that? What does that baby do?
Well, it eats and breathes, and um, it gets milk, and it's kind of it's getting nutrients to launch the baby's life, right? Because there's the old idea, like when the baby pops out of the womb and is there, and like you're seeing a human being, his or her first moments of life on Earth. Maybe the doctor gives it a little snack or something to make sure that it's like breathing, and then it starts to coo or cry a little bit, and it's pretty helpless to a certain extent, but it has to grow, to be to gain the skills, right? Because human babies, some animals are different, like chickens. Once they hatch, they're ready to go. But human babies, we have a long way to go once we're actually born.
Exactly. They're essentially worthless. All they do is take and they take and they take and they take. Shout out to Hamilton if you haven't seen it. That's a good musical. But that's all they do, right? Like human babies, they're born into the world, and they eat, they breathe, they cause issues by crying in the middle of the night, by pooping, by peeing, by making messes, by taking up space, taking up air, taking up oxygen. Like obviously oxygen is very plentiful, but um, they take. That's all they do. They take. They take. But their parents look at them, society looks at them, and they think that that child is worth everything. Like if Warren Buffett could choose between his fortune and his newborn child, he would choose his newborn child over and over and over again, 100% of the time. Hopefully, most other
Right.
people would do the same. And so, what you said earlier about, a doctor sees a human being, you see human life, and you see the first moments of life, and that's kind of celebrated, that's kind of valued. My question to you is, what changed between those first moments of life and these moments of life that made your life less valuable?
Well, I I guess nothing really, because you're like in terms of your value, like kind of you mentioned, you use the Warren Buffett example as the um what was it, the analogy or the comparison, like, hey, he would choose a newborn child over his career and vast wealth any day. Hopefully most parents would be able to do the same, and they still see value in that child. And there's, I think, people, whether it's friends or even just community members at large, where you can look and you can see the intrinsic value that that human has and what they're doing, um, and not just for their job in terms of what they do for society, like, electrician or plumber or engineer or whatever. Like, no, what they're able to do, from a more intangible level back home with their families or their friends or their other interactions. The thing that's changed, even though fundamentally maybe not a lot has changed, even though we're growing older, the thing that one of the many things that separates us from babies is that we, have developed a consciousness and a sense of self. Um, Obviously, babies have a conscious, but they don't have the capacity to be self-critical and think and reflect upon their actions in terms of a causation, like sort of chain of thinking standpoint. So since we've developed this, it allows us to be more critical about ourselves and to be able to judge and value our lives, either relative to other people or relative to where we want to be. So that, I think, can lead to a lot of positive things if we can motivate ourselves to be better, and if we are like genuinely stuck in a place where we are exhibiting toxic behaviors and we need to better ourselves as individuals to make everybody in our lives better. But it can also lead to a lot of unintended consequences that we've already talked about, like, being too critical, or just being, illogically critical of yourself, or sort of putting the negatives way above the positives, and then you focus on the negatives, and then sort of a lot of other things in life crumble because you're focusing too much on the negatives rather than doing what you do to make yourself, the best person that you can be. So, that's sort of my analysis to your question.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel that. I will say that sense of self is key, but like you said so eloquently in your answer, just as much as you can focus on, you're conscious of the negative, you can be just as conscious of the positive. And I think something that you got to understand about the human brain, moving forward as you continue to battle this, I mean, we're all battling it. Like I battle it too, the negative self-talk, the criticizing myself. Like as you move forward in it, like keep in mind that our brain was wired to like pick up negativity because it was kind of to protect ourselves back in the day. Like we really had to
Right,
be able
right.
to pick that stuff up. But now, with not protecting ourselves, we pick up other stuff like things to make us anxious, things to make us fearful, things to keep us on our toes. But both keeping in mind the fundamental value, because when you think about stuff, you have the surface level stuff and then you have the fundamental stuff. Your fundamental value is still there from when you were a child. And you can ask yourself that, you can remind yourself of that by asking yourself this question. Like, if I were to give you $10 million right now for coming on this podcast, would you feel would you feel more excited? Like, if coming on this podcast was a gig that would pay you $10 million and you like earn that $10 million, would you feel like you're more worth it?
Yeah, of course.
Exactly. I mean, we all would, right? But if I told you, you come on this podcast, I give you $10 million, but you can't wake up tomorrow, would you still want to come on the podcast? No.
No, because the rest of my life is worth more than $10 million.
Exactly. But there's so much good you could do with $10 million, right? But there's so much more good you could do with the rest of your life. And so it's like,
Right.
But then you got to realize that negativity, that criticism, that like not forgiving yourself actually keeps you from realizing your potential. And so it's almost immoral to stick in negativity. Like, to criticize yourself and hinder yourself from impacting people the way you could if you were at your full potential is I feel, an immoral act. So don't beat yourself up more about committing immoral acts, but choose positivity, choose to value your life, choose to really make that impact and wake up and realize the potential that you can make every day. So anyway, I similarly struggle with that a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people listening also struggle with that. So I just wanted to walk through that.
Oh yeah.
But awesome, man. What is one action step that you can take right now to meet that energetic, naturally outgoing person who's considered an extrovert that can help you with the networking and the soft skills that might help you in your career, but also your personal life?
Specifically, I can get out my kanji textbook or my Japanese Nihongo Charenji book and just start studying that. Since I'm in Japan right now, there's obviously a language barrier, and breaking down that language barrier helps me meet and interact with a obviously millions of other Japanese people who maybe and a lot of people here do speak English to a certain extent, but it's not maybe as good as other countries. So you breaking that down helps widen the variety and the number of chances you have to meet that extrovert, to meet that outgoing person who can help me along. And it also hopefully whoever I meet, hopefully it could be a mutually beneficial relationship, right? You never want it to be a two-way street. So maybe even if you're not trying to, the other person would be able to offer something to them, whether it's connections of my own or I don't know. I guess since we're in Japan and we're on the subject of languages, English language training, stuff of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. There we go. And we have one last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how there are people on the planet who have a really fixed mindset? They're not willing to accept help. They're not willing to accept change. Sometimes they'll live their whole life like that, and sometimes they'll die like that, unfortunately. Other times they'll make the switch at some point in their life to more of a growth mindset, willing to accept help and willing to accept change. In your opinion, what is the catalyst that causes that switch?
Typically, it would have to be a very monumental event, I think, because unfortunately, like you said, there are some people who, whether they are actively trying to do so or not, maybe just never really. Yeah, I'll just to kind of use your words, but changing them a little bit. Never really change, or think maybe, oh, this is the way I've always done it, or I don't want to change, or I'm a little scared to change. But maybe there's something, maybe there's like a near-death experience, or maybe something dangerous or sad happens with a child or a loved one, or you see something on the news that motivates you to change. These, I think, are factors that are wake-up calls or alarms for people. And I think we use that term for a reason, because they do offer an incentive and a change of perspective for how people operate in their day-to-day lives. Unfortunately, like if you're 45 years old, for example, I don't know if any self-help training or any sort of I don't know. I don't know if it's going to help you. I don't know if, like, for example, empathy can be taught. I don't think it can be taught, and I think it's very difficult to change the mindset of people who are older. So I think these monumental events, if they're going to change people, they're certainly more applicable to the older people who have already a lot of experience built up, and uh, since their lives have operated a certain way up to that point, it's difficult to change. But one last thing is that if we can have early intervention, so to speak, and we can sort of change and motivate the way people behave from a young age, even up to a young adult age, sort of where you and I are at right now, that maybe does not require the monumental event to change a person's outlook and their behaviors in life. That is the one caveat I would say to everything I just said.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. Um, Often when you get this question, it's like that monumental event, that rock bottom. One thing I want to say is that monumental event typically just brings you to a point of desperation. And usually when people get desperate and they realize things can't function how they are, they get more open-minded to solutions. So if you
Yeah.
want to circumvent all that pain and you happen to be 50, do something that will cause you to be more open-minded. Get around some people who are more open-minded, and you might see some stuff start to change. Don't wait for your mom to get cancer or you to get cancer to really start living your life. You can start doing it now. Will it be hard? Yes, it will. But nothing is impossible. You can do it. It will be harder than it is easy. That is for sure. But
Right. Very well said. Very well
most
said.
things worth it are. Most things worth it are. So awesome, Dax. Is there anything else that you want to chat about before we sign off?
Oh, did I need to give like a favorite book, movie, something like that?
Yeah, man. Yeah, we can. I kind of skipped that question because we were running shorter on time. But yeah, you can jump into your favorite book, movie, or podcast.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I'll say my favorite movie is Forrest Gump, and I've talked with a lot of my anth- no, okay. I get that reaction a lot.
Oh, because
And
that is so. It's so on brand. Like if I had to guess
really,
your favorite movie, I would guess Forrest Gump.
dude, seriously, that's awesome. Like I am ecstatic to hear that. Like I've had conversations with my friends, and they don't like Forrest Gump for reasons. And some people say Forrest Gump is a movie which is a product of its time, being it was released in 1994, and in obviously at that time the Cold War just ended. The US was sort of the only major superpower in the world, and everybody, it was like a feel good time, even though it was based on a book written earlier. But in any event, Forrest Gump is yeah, I'm not going to get into it now, especially since we're running short on time. But Forrest Gump, I think uh, there's a lot of analysis and a lot of great things that can be learned from Forrest Gump, and critiques too. We can have a discussion on the critiques as well, but I think a lot of people just like give these bogus or like intellectually dishonest critiques about the movie, where it's like, well, that's not,
Yeah.
you have to take the good with the bad, and you have to analyze it within the context of the movie, and just a whole slew of other things. So yeah, but yeah, Forrest Gump, man, I like that
Hey,
movie.
you're gonna have to schedule another time. You can come on and we can talk exclusively about Forrest Gump.
Seriously.
I'm dead
That would be
serious.
perfect.
Yeah, man. Just schedule another time. Works for me.
Yeah, an in-depth analysis of Forrest Gump.
Absolutely. Well, awesome, Dax. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Likewise, sir. Thank you very much for having me. And if I ever went on tangential points, I apologize about that. That was just an attempt to provide more context to what I was saying, and it was not me trying to just go on these soliloquies randomly. So sorry about that.
No, man, you're all good. We loved having you on, and we look forward to you scheduling again so we can dive into the Forrest Gump in-depth analysis.
Yes.
Awesome. If you guys loved what Dax had to say, make sure to hit him up. The ways to do it will be in the show notes. I think his email address will be in there probably. Um, we'll figure out a way to get you in contact with him. If you happen to know anybody who's energetic, naturally outgoing, and in the Japan area near Dax, make sure to connect them. If you happen to know Elon Musk, get me and Dax an introduction. Also, if there's anybody who knows of any management consultant firms that are looking for incoming employees, make sure to make that connection to Dax, because I know he's looking to jump into the work environment. As we always ask, send this podcast to 1 to 3 people you know need to hear this message. Shoot us a 5-star review on iTunes, and we're out.